Hey guys, I just wanted to make a brief video about the cognitive effects of sleep deprivation, especially long-term and extreme deprivation of sleep. I have a very intimate knowledge of these effects because my life is essentially an unwanted N equals 1 experiment in what happens when you can't sleep. I've likely set a chronic sleep deprivation world record for anybody who doesn't have fatal familial insomnia. I'm starting to think I might have it somehow or something because of the almost impossible levels of sleep deprivation. But it's done a lot of things to me. So first of all, I'll get into details of how severe it's been later. But first of all, I just wanted to explain what I've noticed changing and the effects. It affects a lot of really deep things in your consciousness, but it's very tied to a few specific things where I can just feel them going away when I can't sleep. I believe a lot of the focus of sleep is rotation, basically, allowing yourself to use parts of your brain in ways that aren't differently used, but also filling certain parts of your brain with random information. This is what's happening during dreaming, to dissociate them, so the different neural networks don't get too linked. Is there any reasoning for this? So I hypothesized a long time ago, based on my experience, that sleep and dreams have a role in dissociating the default mode network from the resting mode network, and that the brain has this incredible ability to somehow visualize a 3D object, and also be seeing a 3D space, but these two separate 3D spaces do not appear to intersect at all or interfere with one another. This is really fascinating because it perhaps suggests a multi-dimensional world of consciousness, although I'm not going to go there because maybe there's less crazy explanations, but somehow we have these multiple overlapping spaces. Sleep deprivation really ruined my ability to have that. It's never come back fully. When I first started getting sleep deprived, I was suffering with severe aphantasia due to trauma. When my ability to sleep resurged, which was basically somehow linked to phenobut usage, a lot of people, for some reason with insomnia, have had that. With aphantasia, have had phenobut bring back their visual capacities. It was actually really frustrating because I wouldn't visualize objects as being in my head or outside of my head. I would view them as taking up the space behind me. The blind spot where my vision can't go is where my brain would represent them being. And sometimes they would interfere or map onto some of the other space as well. They just did not seem like separate, but like two things that were very poorly jammed together in a very annoying, disruptive way. And it's taken a long time for my separation capacity to recuperate. But the other thing I've noticed is my daydreams. I could have them. These visual daydreams, they're far too linked to my actual behavior. So if I'm walking around, the only thing I can visualize in my head is walking around. And in fact, I visualize that a lot of the time when I don't want to. It's just a cartoonish image of whatever I'm doing. So this caused me to think that my resting mode network, associated with with daydreaming, was connecting too much with my default mode network associated with everyday action. And I did some research on whether sleep dissociates these networks, and it turns out people who are sleep deprived, they entrain these networks and start entraining with each other in a way that's bad. This dissociating, we're not talking about psychiatric dissociation, but basically it's a thing where you might want to fill different areas of your brain that closely correlate with each other and interact with each other with random information, so that they don't get caught in a feedback loop and that their activity is separate enough. Um, although only one study has mentioned this as overall sleep, I can tell you from my experience, it matters. It's part of why sleep matters a lot. Yeah. By the way, if you hear me um, ever get stuck or too repetitive in these videos or lose my train of focus, it's because the sleep deprivation still has a really severe effect. Haven't fully recovered, feel like I've lost a lot of my mental capacity. So I fumble things a lot and I'm not very articulate at some points. But as far as what else sleep does, like I said, I think it's partly associated with letting so many different modalities coexist at the same time, which is a wonderful part of consciousness. An example is that at my most sleep deprived, and I've noticed this when I have started sleeping more, at my very most sleep deprived, sort of like the issue of not being able to separate everyday activity from dreams or stuff like that. In my case, it happened in a very boring, mundane way rather than, the opposite, which would have been insanity. But along with this, I've noticed other pretty interesting but frustrating things. And one of the things is I couldn't focus on different senses at the same time. You know how you can pay attention to how food smells and how it tastes at the same moment, and you can kind of attach those qualities to each other. This is a wonderful thing about consciousness where color always has a shape and an object has a smell, and you can unify all those things. I actually had a long time where I couldn't notice the smell of something if I was paying attention to the taste of it, and vice versa. I couldn't smell things when I was looking at things if I didn't have my eyes closed. So basically, like the multitasking of sense modalities was really messed up. And this is interesting because I think I've said this before, but I think a larger role of sleep is rotation. Filling different parts of the brain with separate data in a way that's disruptive while you're waking. Dreams can be viewed as one of these randomization mechanisms, obviously. I think it just really disrupts that stuff. I was going to say more, but I'm actually too tired to really think of what else I was going to say. So sorry that this always happens with these videos, but it's the only thing I can do to get myself out of the anxiety loop is to distract myself with something like